introduction, and good morning everyone, or I should say good afternoon. I am actually in London, so it is nice and early, but thank you for taking the time out of your afternoon. My name is Andrew Lawrence. I am on the Shotgun Support Street team. Some of you I may have talked to on our support forums, and we also have Mansi based in Mumbai, who is going to help us with the presentation today. So we are going to cover a variety of topics today. We have done previous webinars in the past that have covered the basics of Shotgun, but the idea today is actually to focus on a bit more in-depth topics. So we're going to start out fairly simple. We are going to cover some tips and tricks for those who are already using Shotgun who might not know, some tips and tricks around scheduling. We're going to cover topics like designing reports and Canvas pages, and then we're going to go really deep and look at things like query fields, tracking, other things in Shotgun that you might not know how to do, like deliveries and retakes. So it's a bit of a mixed session, but hopefully it's intended for those who are using Shotgun and may want to learn a bit more, or may want to see how Shotgun is being used for other things that they might not know. So it's just a disclaimer that this webinar is assuming that you do know how to use Shotgun, or you are using Shotgun currently. If you are a complete beginner, we do have various tutorials and resources that can help you get started, but please be aware that the topics covered today will be aimed at those who know how to use Shotgun. So just throwing that out there, there are plenty of resources that we have online that can help you get up to speed if you're very new to Shotgun. But even if you are, hopefully some of the topics we will cover today will be useful and knowledgeable to you nonetheless. So with that out there, we have around 1 hour. We're going to leave some time for Q&A at the end, and that's not just the topics we covered today, but any other questions you may have around Shotgun, please do let us know in the chat window. So we're actually I'm going to hand off to my wonderful colleague Mansi, who is going to kickstart us with the first two topics. So as we go through, any problems with the audio or picture, as we will be sharing screens, please do let us know in the chat. So over to you, Mansi. I believe you will need the screen.
Yeah, thanks.
Right. Okay. Let's just double check. Right.
Okay.
We can see your screen.
Okay, awesome. So just as Andrew mentioned, that we are going to be covering some of the ideas about how to schedule tasks. So more of the idea out here is always we do have the information that, you know, a lot of shots and assets are a bunch of tricks that we have to schedule in and out for a lot of artists in multiple departments. So the idea out here is basically trying to give you little ingest of tips and tricks to make your life easy. When being in production, you're supposed to assign work to the artists who are working along with you on a project. So just to start off with, this is one of the task page that I have on one of my projects. And this is going to be like, let's just say I'm going to be assigning this work to someone, like just assuming it's me. I'm going to be assigning this to multiple people who might just be on board soon enough. So that's going to be the kind of work that's going to be going on and off. You have to keep on the idea of that. You have a department workflow that runs through. So basically you would want an art to be done first, and then you would want modeling, rigging, and texturing, or the kind of processes to follow into each other. The idea out here is basically we are trying to see, we are going to create dependencies in between of these departments to understand that, you know, first this process needs to follow and then the other one. So the when we are doing that, you can actually just select all of these things together, and then you can go something in called as link dependencies. So this is basically going to help you to schedule the work, interlock between the departments. So just in case I'm going to assign this work to today, and now as you see, I apparently linked all of this work to the idea of, let's just say I'm going to shift this schedule across here. So I have all of this information saying that, first the art has to go in, the model has to go in. So this is going to help you even the schedule the work in between of each department. So that what do I mean by saying that? I can assign the work to Anders and Anne together and define that they are going to be dependent to each other. So when I say that only after 14th of April, the work is going to be escalated to someone else after this. So this really helps from the perspective of when it's a master asset or a master shot, and then there are derivatives that need to be driven through that. The other importance also comes into, if for example you have or like a heavy model that's being done by a senior artist, you just want one of the artists to be doing that. So this interlocking or maybe link dependencies that we call it into shotgun helps to derive this information. So that's one of the tips and tricks that falls into. The other idea of event comes into when you have different kind of filters. So let's just say you want to just see that what has been on waiting to start for a long time, and you need to be assigning all that kind of work. So this is something that's going to even understand and help through that. If for example I'm supposed to be giving this as priority, I need to shuffle these dates across. There are other ways also of the idea that you want to remove the reports. Let's say I'm going to create a new filter that's going to give me the idea of like the art department, and I'm going to say what's the kind of information on the due that's going to be that I'm supposed to be delivering by this week. So that's the kind of information that helps you to drive it through. Oops, I just said that. And I'm going to name my filter. So this is the current week's delivery from the art department. So this does help to even isolate the deliveries that you're supposed to make department wise if you're working as a department producer, or maybe a coordinator who's running between the asset departments to the shorts department. So these are basic filters that can help you to do it. The other part of it is also that you can rearrange all of this information by running it through groups or maybe sorting it out. So you can actually run these through, like let's just say you have been working for the art department. You can have all of these groups that can help you identify. We also have something called as advanced groups. So this is the kind of information that helps you to even prioritize that, let's just say I want to help you prioritize that, what needs to go first. And in, of course, being in production, you need to have all of these things in priority. The other important bit, let's just say if you want to have something called as a formatting role. So we go into more and we have something called as change color rows. This is going to help you identify which are going to be important dates and events you have to keep a track about. Let's just assume that you have a trailer delivery that's going to be high on priority. You can actually create a rule identifying it as on a larger base. So I'm going to just create one of the work saying, let's just say it's going to be a due date that's going to be in the current week. So I'm just going to highlight the background as going to be, let's just say green, and I'm going to keep this as black. So as soon as I hit on save, I want to mention that this is one of the ideas that you are creating a global rule for all the pages that are across all projects. If, for example, you just want to create a formatting rule, it's for one specific project, I'd suggest you use the same one that's above here, and it's going to run the same way. As soon as I hit now, this is going to even identify of the kind of work that needs to be delivered by today or maybe by this week. So we are not apparently seeing that anything right now here. I'm just going to jump into one of these dates that we have here. So let's just say that, this is for 2 days and I'm supposed to be delivering this. So here we go. We have the important dates or events that are highlighted to us, which needs to go across to the next department or needs to be delivered to our client. So this does help in identifying even if there's some work that has been on hold for quite some time, or any of the information that needs to have more crucial. So you can go ahead and have all of these different kind of rules that can be created multiple times, no matter if it's a final shot or in progress shot. The other bit is that I'd like to highlight is also something that we have, something called as row colors. So what these row colors do is, for example, if I want to make this as more prominent, I can actually highlight, change the header color. So these are just small tips and tricks that you can use across your shotgun pages, or maybe multiple projects, that you can help to make it more useful and more prominent enough. So yep, I have that kind of yep, that covers up majority of the things that I have. I'm going to pass that on to Andrew, and we'll take that forward.
Righty. Thank you, Mansi, for that. Right. Sharing the screen. So can you see the Shotgun Help Center?
Yep, I do.
Yep, you do. Fantastic. Right, okay, so just to recap for those who may have arrived a little bit late, we are covering a range of advanced tips and tricks inside of Shotgun today. So this isn't for basic Shotgun use. We're actually going deep into advanced tips and tricks. We've just looked at advanced scheduling tricks, how you can more efficiently track the tasks and the work that's happening in your studio, and also how to use coloring and formatting to make the data more visually appealing. So for example, as Mansi showed you, you can color your rows if your task's due date is running over your estimate. Now, what I have on my screen here is the Shotgun Help Center, which you can access at support.shotgunsoftware.com. Some of you may be very familiar with it. I'd like to bring it up because a lot of the topics we're covering do have articles on this site, and we will be sending them out afterwards. So, for example, if you want to type in conditional formatting, and then you get a bunch of options here with some articles that can help you understand these topics. Now, not only does it bring articles, it also brings up feature requests. So you can see here that we have some feature requests that people want. We highly encourage people to go and vote on feature requests if they feel that it should be part of the Shotgun product. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to my first section, which I want to cover, which is what we call canvas pages. Now, again, this is an article on support.shotgunsoftware.com. You can simply search for canvas pages, and you have the article right there, which you can follow along with. We also have a nice video tutorial that takes you through this if you want to follow up afterwards. So what is a canvas page? Well, a canvas page is a type of page in Shotgun that lets you summarize information. So Shotgun is holding a lot of data, and often producers or people who need to see brief summaries are not going to want to go and trawl through a lot of information. So a canvas page is used to help someone summarize information. Now, some of you may be familiar with these already, but I would like to sort of show you some tips and tricks that you can use, even if you are using a canvas page. So I'm on my Shotgun site, and what I want to do is I want to reveal a page that is designed for this purpose. So this is my project. I'm in a project called Demo Animation, and across the top, I've got some entities that you are all very familiar with. What I'm going to do is go to Project Actions and Navigation. And this lets me customize what is on this top bar. Now, why am I telling you this? Because we have a specific canvas page that is included in your Shotgun site by default. And that is this thing here called Project Details. Now you can drag this up to the top. I'm just going to pop it here. And Project Details is now going to appear on my top navigation bar. Now, this is a canvas page. When I click on it, you'll see that it's made up of various widgets. And that is something that is quite unique to a canvas page. It's not something that is available to other types of pages in Shotgun. So for example, this is showing me the details of my project, and it's showing me the crew who is assigned to my project. I have another tab over here called Stats, which actually shows me some stats for my project with graphs and thumbnails, and also has an option for a wiki. So we're going to go through how to create these widgets, but what I'll show you first is how do I create a Canvas page? Well, it's very, very simple. You just go to New Page. You can either go to plus and then down to Page. And what you want to do is set the type. Now, normally when you create a page in Shotgun, you say, do I want to see a page of assets, a page of shots, a page of people? Well, what you want to do is go all the way to the bottom, and you'll see this little option called Canvas. So I'm going to call it my reporting dashboard, which is a nice little name for my Canvas page. And when I arrive at my Canvas page, you'll see that it's blank. Now, any page in Shotgun, like the one that Marcy was showing you, usually consists of a long list of information, whether it be shots or tasks, but a Canvas page is blank. So what you want to do on your Canvas page is say this canvas is empty. Enter design mode to add and arrange widgets. So I'm going to enter design mode. And the first thing I'm going to do is say, well, how many rows or columns do I want? Let's just use the default here, which is one row with 2 columns. And then you want to go over to this widgets tab. Now, this is where you can add various items to your page. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to drop a grid. And it says, what do you want this grid to display? Well, I would like to display some shots. I'm going to hit configure. And then I'm just going to hit save. And I'll show you what that looks like. So now we actually have a grid on a page. And this is a grid of shots. Now I can obviously make it bigger. You'll see I also have access to my filtering controls. So let's say I only want to see the shots that are final. And I want to hide some fields. I don't actually want to see this, this pipeline. I'm going to hide that. And there we go. That's fine. So what I want to do is add some more information to this page. So let's say this is my dashboard. I want to see all the shots that are final, but this big long list is a little bit big. So what I want to do is create a graph. So I'm going to go back into design, go over to widgets, and I'm going to take a graph and drop it down here. Again, I'm going to change the graph type to shot, and I'm going to hit configure. Now what this is showing me is it's showing me a percentage of my shots based on the status. So it's saying how many shots are, and I just clicked on the wrong thing, how many shots are waiting to start? 209. How many shots are final? 64. How many are in progress? And on the other side, it actually gives me a percentage of that based on the number of shots that I have. So again, I'm going to hit save. And now I've added a very simple graph to my page. So let's take that one step further. Let's actually say, let's edit this graph, and let's call this shot status. Now that's cool. What I want to do is I want to create another graph that actually shows me my task status, because when I'm looking at tasks, I want to break it down by department. So I'm going to take a new graph, and this time I'm going to show tasks. I'm going to hit configure. Now again, by default, when you create a graph, it's going to summarize by the status. That's not quite what I want in this case. You'll see on the left here, it's graphing by the status field. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change that, and I'm going to change it to pipeline step. And you'll see now, this is updated. Rather than summarizing by the status, it's actually summarizing by the pipeline step of that task. So I can see that I've got 303 FX tasks, 301 comp tasks, etc. Under this display option, you'll see I have the option to summarize rather than count. Now, when I count, it's just showing me the total number, but when I summarize, I want to summarize by the status field. And the calculation show me a percentage of final. So what does this mean? This is showing me out of all of my art tasks, what is the percentage that is final? So I can look at this graph. If I hit save, I can look at this graph and I can see straight away 88% of my art tasks are complete. So I know that I'm on track, whereas only 22% of my comp tasks are complete. So I can see if comp is due in the next week, this is quite alarming because it shows me that I've only completed 22%. Now, this is some stats that is very difficult to grab from a page full of tasks. So this graph here is very, very useful in terms of summarizing that information. So I hope that makes sense, and that's just two examples of what we can do on a Canvas page. I'm not going to go into all of them, but most of the widgets are pretty self-explanatory. So for example, thumbnails, fields, if we actually go back to the project details page that I showed you, you'll see that that uses some other widgets. For example, it uses a thumbnail on the left. It has some fields for the project. And also it has this thing down here called wiki. Now this is an interesting one. This is what we call a URL field. And what it does is it allows you to put in an actual URL. So if you want to embed a web page into Shotgun, you can do it here. Now bear in mind, not all web pages will work. It really depends on if the web page supports iframe embedding. But it's a great example of how you can embed things like internal wikis into Shotgun. And then my final favorite widget is something called Countdown, which is not like the TV show, but is actually a countdown. I can take a figure widget, and it says you have 2 days until deadline, because who doesn't want to scare their artists into thinking that the deadline is in 2 days? So that is that is always good fun with countdown widgets. So have a play around. There's plenty of other widgets that you can use to help design Canvas pages, and they are intended to summarize and display information. Alrighty, so just to remind everyone who's here, as we're going through, please do post questions in the chat. We are going to have time for Q&A at the end, and we can come back to any of these topics and look through them in more detail. So please do let us know. Okay, going to pop back to the overview. So again, that was designing Canvas pages. We have a nice tutorial on that, which you can access at our support site. The next thing we're going to look at is query fields. And query fields is, again, another way of summarizing information. But instead of looking at stats, we're going to look at something else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my project and I'm going to look at some shots. Now, in a VFX or animation pipeline, it is very common to work with what we call versions. Versions being a number of iterations that you've made on a shot or asset. So what I want to do, I have a page of shots here in Shotgun. It shows me the shot name, the status, and some editorial information. It's a very basic page. What it doesn't show me, let's say, for example, I'm a supervisor and I want to know what is the latest version for this shot. I want to know what is the version number, and I want to be able to see exactly what that version, what is the latest version on that shot. Now, because Shotgun works on what we call an entity basis, because I'm looking at shots, it is quite difficult to see other information. So for example, I could go over to this versions tab here, and I could have a look through these versions, and I could find the shot that I was looking at. You'll see here versions are linked to shots, and I could scroll through here and I could find the version, and then I could look at the version number. Now that is not a very good way of doing it. It is very long and it's very unintuitive. Alternatively, back over on my shots page, I could actually click on my shot to enter what we call the shot detail page. And this shows me a bit more information. It shows me all of the versions for that shot. And again, I could scroll through, I could look for the latest version, or I could use this latest checkbox, which would show me the very latest version for that shot. But again, that is still a bit too many clicks for what I want to do. I want to make a summary page that my supervisor can look at and know instantly what is the latest version. And that's why we're going to create a query field. So in order to create a new field, I just click on this button here, and I will go to Manage Shot Fields. These are all the custom fields that I have created for my shot. So what I'm going to do is add a new field, and I want to set the type as query. Now, if you've created fields in Shotgun, you're very familiar with this process. You just choose the type that you want for your field. I'm going to call this latest version. Now, a query field allows you to summarize any entity that you want. So the first thing you do is choose your entity type. So what I want to do is I want to show some versions. So I'm going to click on this here, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to choose version. Now, automatically, what it's done is it's added a query that says show versions where the link is current shot. What that means is it's going to search for all of the versions that are linked to that shot. And that's exactly what I want. It's done that already for me by default. So let's hit next, and it's going to create that field. Now, at the moment, it's actually going to show me a number. So when my field appears, latest version, and it's actually showing me 25. Well, what is that? Let's click on it. And it's actually showing me all of the versions that are linked to that shot. Now, that's kind of what I did. Let's go back to configure field. But what I didn't do is I didn't set the display. Now, at the moment, it's just counting those versions. So it's saying, look at all the versions linked to the shot and count them. And that's not what I want. What I want is to show a single version. Show the first version sorted by date created descending. That means show me the latest version. And then, instead of displaying the version ID, I would like to see the version name. And I'm going to hit update. So what this is going to do is it should show me a single version that is the latest version. And there we go. So now for every shot, I can see exactly what is the latest version. I can see, okay, for this shot, we're at version 3. For this other shot, we're all at version 3. There's a lot of version 3s. But for example, this shot here, the latest version is something called vendor test. And that's fine. That is showing me the latest version for that shot. I can actually click on that version and see what that is. And there we go. So that is just one of many, many, many examples that you can use to for query fields. And I'm going to show you another more complex example. I'm actually going to create a query field on people. So let's have a look at some of these people. Now I'm just going to filter this out to artists. And here we go. Okay, so I've got 4 artists here. And what I want to do is I want to find out how many tasks across all of their projects they've completed. Now that is a big ask. I could go into each project, I could look at all their tasks, I could create some summaries, I could try and calculate how many tasks they've done. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a query field. So again, I'm going to go to Manage Fields. I'm going to add a new field, and I'm going to make it a query field. And I'm going to call this Total Tasks Completed. Again, you set the entity type, and the entity type that we want to return is tasks. So let's go down to task. Now, by default, it doesn't have any conditions. So what I want to do is say new condition, and you can see again, it's automatically added show me tasks where assigned to includes current person, and that is exactly what I want. Now, instead of doing task count or single task, I'm going to do summarize, because what I want is to take all of those tasks, and I want to do a calculation based on that data. So I'm going to do summarize. Now, instead of summarizing by bid, I want to summarize by status. And I want to do the calculation based on a percentage of final. And I'm going to hit next. So what this is going to do, let's say artist A has 10 tasks and 5 of those tasks are complete. it should show me 50% because that is 5 tasks out of 10, which is 50%. And you can see exactly here, that's what it's doing. So for example, Shotgun Artist has 67% complete tasks. You can actually click on here and it will show you all of those tasks. Now this guy has 3 tasks, 2 of them are complete and 1 of them is not. So let's say, for example, he finishes that task. Let's set that to final. Let's close this down. And when I refresh, that number has jumped to 100% to say out of 3 tasks, you have completed all of them, aka you have 100%. So that's just one way that I can see a summary of that information. I can even tweak this one step further. Instead of all tasks, I want to break it down by pipeline step. So say, don't show me all of the tasks. I'm going to add a new condition and say pipeline step is, and let's say model. Let's hit update. And we should actually change that to say total model tasks complete. So now instead of searching all of my tasks, it is searching just model tasks. And again, these artists don't actually have any model tasks assigned to them. That's why it's showing an X. Whereas this artist here, he has 1 task called model, which is complete. That's why it shows it as 100%. So I hope that makes sense. There are endless things that you can do with query fields. And that's just 2 examples. Again, you can actually go to our support site and type in query fields. We have a very in-depth document on how to create them and actually give you some examples of what you might create them for. Okay. I can see we do have some questions here, which is good. We are going to save those towards the end, so please bear with us and we will definitely cover those questions. But thank you for writing them in, and please do, if anyone has any other questions, please do let us know and we will cover them towards the end. We have about 15 minutes left in which we're going to cover topics and then we're going to go on to Q&A. Okay, so one of the final topics we're going to look at today is deliveries. Now, this might not apply to a lot of workflows, but I think it's something that a lot of people don't realize is possible to track in Shotgun. And when we talk about a delivery, if we're talking about an animation or a VFX or even a games house, you are always going to be receiving deliveries. It might not be called deliveries, but basically a delivery is a package of content that you are either sending to someone or someone is sending to you. So for example, if you're working on a film, your client will send you some scans or some plates that you should be using to create your shots. Now, deliveries is a way of tracking that. It's a way of tracking, well, on what day did the client send me these scans? Or on what day did I send this version to the client for review? And we actually have an entity that can do this for you in Shotgun, and it's called Deliveries. So the first thing you're going to want to do in Shotgun is enable the Deliveries entity. You're going to go to Site Preferences, which is down here. And I'm going to go over to Entities. Now, we have a lot of entities in Shotgun which are turned on by default. Those of you familiar with how this works will know how to enable an entity, but I'm just going to go down to this delivery entity. Now, I've turned it on if it's not enabled on Shotgun sites by default. So if you want to turn it on, just go here and say, yes, enable entity. Once that's done, you can go back to your Shotgun page and you will actually see under this other drop-down, deliveries. Now, to make it a bit easier, I'm going to go to navigation and I'm going to take deliveries and I'm going to add it to my navigation bar. So let's go to deliveries and see exactly what the delivery looks like. Well, out of the box, a delivery has some fields that you can use to populate your package. Now, this is called package whatever. And a package is basically my name for something that I want to send or I have received from a client. So for example, a package has a status. Who's it from? this package was received from a vendor, it's a client package, it was sent via FTP, and this is the date that it was received. Now, it also has, I've added a field which allows me to track all of the versions that were included in that package. And this is really useful. So for example, what I want to do is go to my versions page, and I want to see, okay, which package was this version included in? Because often clients will ask you, they'll say, well, we didn't receive this version. We don't have it. Where is it? And I'm going to go back through my shotgun, and I can see here, this version was included in package 1. I know that. I linked it up to my delivery. Therefore, I know that there is no discrepancy that this version was included in that package. Likewise, I can actually go to my package here and see these are the versions that were sent in that package. Now, deliveries are a bit special. You can actually click on a delivery and it gives you what we call a threaded view. If you work with tickets inside of Shotgun, you may be familiar with this view, but it's a special type of view that we use for certain entities. So for example, you've got some metadata up here, and let's say I want to see all of the versions that were included in this delivery. I'm going to go to design page, and I actually want to add a field down here. And I'm going to add the versions field. And there we go. So now on my package, I can see exactly all of the versions that were sent. And I've actually got this little conversation history. So what I'm going to do here is actually, I'm going to CC my producer. I'm going to CC my manager actually. And I'm going to say, client is saying they didn't receive version 3 with my horrible spelling. But it's linked to the delivery. There we go. So you can have a nice conversation on that delivery. So in essence, a delivery is just a way of tracking what versions were sent or what versions were received. So let's say, for example, I want to send some stuff to my client. I'm going to create a new delivery. I'm going to call it package, let's just say number 3002. It's from me, which is admin, and it's to the vendor. So it's to Shotgun vendor. Now let's just create that for now. It's created a new package, and I want to send it via, say, Aspira. I want to send it today, and again, it's a client package. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to playlists. And I've already prepped the playlists of things that I have reviewed and I want to send to my clients. So for example, today's review. These are the versions I want to send to my client. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually reveal this field, which allows me to link a version to a delivery. I'm going to highlight all of these versions and say, okay, I want to send these to today's package. And done. There we go. Now, back over in my packages list, if I refresh, you'll see that the content of this package has now updated with those 4 versions that I have created. Now, again, what I'm actually doing is just manually doing this in the UI. This is not actually doing anything on disk. It's not packaging that up. It's not sending it to the client, but it's just a way of tracking it. Now, what you can do and what you definitely will want to do is you will want to integrate deliveries with some sort of API script or tool. For those who are new to our API, what we have is something called a Python Shotgun API, which is a powerful way that you can script integration between Shotgun and other tools. Now, every studio handles deliveries differently. That's why we do not provide any sort of automation for this process. However, you can use deliveries and integrate it into your pipeline. So, for example, I used to work at a facility where we would create delivery packages, we would add versions to them, and when we were ready, let's say we wanted to send it via FTP, and we would actually have something called an action menu item, which we would trigger which would actually take all of those versions, it would package them up, and it would send them via FTP. And that was all an automated process. And it's not something that we'll have time to go into today, but it's one example of how you can extend this deliveries framework to use in your pipeline. And if you want to know more about our Python API and our integration, you can actually go to developers. That is at developer.shotgunstudio.com. And this is a whole site for pipeline developers on how you can integrate Shotgun into your pipeline. Now, unfortunately, that's not what this webinar is about today, but I do want to make that information available for those who are interested. So, where were we? Deliveries. Yes. Again, we have a document that shows you how to do this. You can go to the support site and type in deliveries for tracking and IO. And it's a nice tutorial that actually shows you how you can use deliveries, what you might want to use them for, and even some suggestions on how you might want to integrate them into your pipeline. Fantastic. Right. We have 20 minutes left. I'm going to cover one more topic and then we're going to jump to the questions because I can see we've got some questions, which is awesome. I'm going to cover this quite quickly because it is a very specific workflow, and that is something called retakes. Retakes is something that is used in some VFX pipelines and animation pipelines if there is something that you want to address. Now, let's say that the shot has been final, the shot has been finished, and it got kicked back from the client. There was a problem. There was a problem with this shot, and it needs to be changed. Now, I'm actually going to leave this this topic because I'd like to get into some of the questions, but basically there are two ways that you can track retakes. You can use notes or you can use tasks, and I'll quickly show you how we might do that. So let's look at some notes. In Shotgun, a note is basically a piece of feedback. And what I want to do is I want to add a type called retake. So let's add this here. Let's call it retake. Now, when I'm reviewing my work, so for example, I'm going to open up this version here. And let's say this shot previously had got finaled. It had got complete, but someone noticed that there was a problem with it. When I create my note, what I want to make sure that I do is add in this field called type. And I want to make sure that I've set, I need to refresh my browser. I want to make sure that I've set the note type to retake. And I'll show you why that is very, very important. So let's open that up again. I just had to refresh my browser to pick up the new field that I just created. So, kickback from client. This needs to be redone. Stop that playing. And let's highlight the area that needs to be redone. And let's make the type as retake. Let's hit submit. Fantastic. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that I can track these retakes. Because I've assigned a type to the note, I can now filter out for any notes that are retake. So let's do that. Let's go back to my notes page. Let's hit refresh. And I'm going to filter via type and by retake. And there we go. There is one retake that needs to be addressed. Now, part of Shotgun's notification system, which we're not going to cover today, allows artists to be informed that that retake has been created. And when they finished with that retake, they can simply set the status to closed. And that means that the comment has been addressed. When I refresh this, you'll see there's no more retakes because I want to make sure that the status is not closed. And there we go. So why did I show you this? Well, notes is a good way to track retakes because often retakes will interfere with your tasks. A lot of people have a task pipeline that they don't want to mess up by including retakes. But depending on your pipeline, you can do this as well. One of the fields we have for tracking notes is something called open notes. And open notes will look at all of the notes for that shot. So sorry, open notes and open notes count. Open notes count will give you a number. So it says there are 10 notes here that haven't been addressed. So I'm going to click on this, and let's say that I've completed this note and I close it and I refresh. You will see that that number drops down to 9. There we go. So open notes, you could use this to track your retakes. So for example, as we looked at previously, you could create a query field that shows you all of the retakes. And let's do that. So let's create a query field. We want to query for notes. And we want to make sure that the note type is retake and the status is not closed. And what that's going to do is it's going to show us all of the retake notes that have not been addressed. So again, for that supervisor who wants to see the one-page dashboard, he can see instantly how many retakes need to be addressed on that shot. Right. I'm going to leave that topic for now. You can have a look by searching for tracking retakes in Shotgun if you want to learn more on that support site. So let's dive into the questions. We do have time, and don't worry, we can run on a little bit longer for those who have some more questions. I do understand that time is precious, so I'm going to try and get through as much of these as possible. Okay, so our first question, can we add a parameter that appears in the column filter? Now, you might have to refresh my memory on that. I'm assuming that was for the Canvas page example. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that. Maybe if you wouldn't mind just elaborating on that, and we can come back to that question. We can get some more information. We can definitely have a look. But I'm going to quickly...
I think he's referring to the idea of adding more fields to the filter tab that we have. So we can add more parameters is what I think he's referring to.
To the filter. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely we can. So for those who don't know, we have a filter panel in Shotgun, which is used to filter out anything you want. Now, you saw previous examples of Muncie and myself using this to filter out based on a specific criteria. For example, show me shots that are final. And there we go. Or show me shots that are in progress. What you can do, which is what I believe the question is asking, is you can combine that to have multiple filters. If you hold down Command or Control on Windows, you can add more conditions. So for example, show me shots that are final and in progress. And you'll see I've got 2 checkboxes here. You can actually add more filters to this option here. So for example, I want to add a tags filter. Now I have a tags field in Shotgun. And let's say, for example, that this is a green screen shot. I want to tag it as green screen. Green screen. Let's create that tag. And there we go. Let's hit refresh. And now, as part of my filter, I can not only search for shots of final status, but also search for shots where the tag is green screen. And there we go. So I hope that answered the question. If it didn't, please do post again. I'm sorry if I misunderstood that, but we are going to move on to the next question. Okay, in shots, we have cut in, start frame, cut out, end frame, and cut duration. Can we see that information in seconds as well? Fantastic. So that's from Rakesh. So we have on shots, what he's referring to is cut in, cut out, and cut duration. Now this field is just a number. It's a number field. So it's only storing an actual a number. Now by default we are tracking that in frames, but there is absolutely no reason why you cannot track that in seconds. If you would prefer to have your cut duration in seconds, you don't have to have it in frames. This field is simply holding a number. So if you want to have that as 0.5, or you may want to change the field type or use what we call a float field type, because a float field type will support multiple decimal points. A number will actually round up the information that's in that field. You can change that. If you go to Site Preferences, you can go to Formatting, and here it says Rounding for Number Fields and Currency Fields. And here we go. So there's a whole bunch of options. It's like, how do I want to round it up? How do I want the numbers to be displayed? And there are various settings that you can do there. So I hope that answers the question. Cut duration is just holding a number. So whether you want to track that in frames or seconds, it's entirely up to you. It's not forcing you to use one or the other. If you do want to start doing decimal points, you may want to consider looking into a float field, but otherwise you can put whatever information you want in that field. So moving on, we have a question about Canvas pages. Can we have Canvas pages auto refresh at specific intervals? Now, that's a very good question, and I'm glad you brought that up. The example that I assume we want is that if someone's looking at a Canvas page in Shotgun, Shotgun does not live refresh its data. The reason it does do that, or the reason it doesn't do that, is because of performance. If we were to refresh the page consistently and live, it would mean that the performance would be a lot slower than Now, although the data is updated instantly in the database, it is not reflected instantly on a page. You'll notice throughout this webinar, I have been clicking refresh to actually refresh the changes so that the graphs and the widgets will pick up the latest data. So you don't have to worry, when you put data into Shotgun, it's always saved instantly. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't update that information instantly. Another example is, let's say, for example, someone is changing a whole bunch of values, and other artists in Shotgun, they're consistently seeing everything changing. So that's why we don't want to update that information automatically. Now, however, I know this example, I know it's very useful. What I would suggest is actually to use a browser extension. Chrome, for example, has something called Auto Refresh, which is a browser plugin that will refresh your page every minute or 30 seconds. And it's something that you can use what will actually refresh your Shotgun pages for you. So it's not something that we do in Shotgun for performance reasons, but if you want to experiment with that, I'd suggest looking at a browser plugin that can help you do it. Alrighty. Again, as I'm going through these questions, if I don't answer them 100%, please do let me know in another question and we can look some further. Okay. So unfortunately, there's not a name with this question, but do query fields support mathematical calculations? The answer is kind of. They support mathematical calculations to an extent. So one of the things that query fields do not do, they will not, let's say, for example, you have cut in, cut out, and you want to calculate the duration by doing a mathematical operation, which would be cut in, well, cut in minus cut out or plus out. My math is terrible. But you want to do a mathematical operation to work out the cut duration. That is something that is not possible with query fields. Unfortunately, it's not like Excel where we can do A plus B equals and then put that value into a new field. That is not what query fields can do. The mathematical operations that they can do is based on summarizing information. So you saw when I created my query field on people, I was doing a summary of the percentage. And I can do a summary based on other percentages as well, but that is kind of the extent of what we I want to query time logs. Now, time logging is something that we haven't covered today, but it's a way that artists can track time. And because we're dealing with actual numbers, we can do a bit more in terms of the calculations. So I want this query field to show me total, well, let's say average time logged. Now, because I'm dealing with numbers, I actually get a lot more calculations here. Rather than just summary or percentage, I actually have things like minimum, maximum, and average. So if I were to put average, this new query field is going to take those time logs and it's going to calculate the average across all of them. Now, these artists don't actually have any time logged against them, which is why it's not showing anything. but you can do those mathematical operations, but that is the extent that you can. A lot of people ask us, we want to do things like multiplication and combine two fields together. Unfortunately, that's not something that we have in Shotgun at the moment. So I hope that answers the question. I'm going to move on to the next one from Rajesh. Hi, Andrew. We receive images with retake notes. How can we add images in the notes? Fantastic. So this is about the retakes. So when we were looking at retakes, we were looking at creating notes for those images. Now, when you actually review versions in Shotgun, if you were to draw on the frame like I did, and those of you may know this already, Shotgun uploads those notes, those attachments as images that you can see. But let's say, for example, this is my shot. I'm going to say add note, and I'm going to make it a retake. And I'm going to say, client, kick this back, make it more like this. And I want to attach some external reference to that note. You actually have this attach button here. I'm going to say attach, and then I have three options. I can upload a file, so I can actually choose a file from disk to upload to my note, or you can even put in a web URL. So if you have some reference that's on the web, you could say, okay, please look at this URL, and I'm going to paste it in here. And when I create that note, it's going to attach that URL or that image to that note. So that can be used not just for retakes, but for notes in general. You have the option to add that as an attachment. You can even do that from your overlay player. If you are reviewing some content in Shotgun, as I'm creating a note, like I did here, you see this little paperclip says attach file, and I can do that. And again, I can upload a file as an attachment to that note. All right, so I hope that makes sense. Okay. So can we save column set filters for various report types? So I believe this is an extension to the original question, which was about filters. And the answer is yes. Yes, we can. So let's actually let's go back to my project details page. Let's say, for example, I want to save some filters for a specific report. And that's exactly what I can do. I'm going to go to design page. I'm going to add a new view. And let's say I want this view to show me all of my versions that need reviewing. So I'm going to say versions need review. And I'm going to make it a version tab. And I'm going to hit save. Now this is showing me everything. And what I believe the question is asking is, can you save filters for specific views? And the answer is yes. I'm actually going to duplicate this view. And I'm going to call it versions final, or as we should say, final versions. So these are two different pages. They're two different reports or views, and I want them to have different filters. At the moment, they don't have any filters on them. So I'm going to set this filter to say, this page, show me versions that are pending review. And I'm going to hit save. And the nice thing is that filters are saved per view or per page. So over on my final versions, the filter that I just made is not here. It does not apply to this view. I'm going to set a different filter, and I'm going to say versions that are approved. And again, I'm going to hit save. So now I've got two tabs, and I can flip between them, and the filter is saved on each tab. So for example, this page, this view is always showing me versions that are pending review, and this tab is always showing me ones that are final. You'll see, for example, if I change this status to not NA, it actually disappears from that list. So the filter is consistently locked to that view or that report or that page. So you can set up various views with filters so that when someone accesses your page, they are always going to see the information that you want them to. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that answers your question. Alrighty. So we are bang on, well, it's 11:30 here, and there are no more questions. I'm more than happy to answer some more questions. Is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss? Right.
I think that's the
Silence is
last
golden.
question. We have one more question that's come up. Can we move widgets from one Canvas page to the other?
Right. Fantastic. So if you have created a version, sorry, if you've created a widget inside of a single Canvas page, unfortunately, you can't move it. There isn't a way to transfer widgets between different Canvas pages. What you will have to do, unfortunately, is create it again. So for example, if I want this task status widget to appear on this view, there isn't any way that I can actually move it across. Unfortunately, I will have to recreate that. However, within a single view, you can obviously move it around. You can move that widget to different places on that page. But unfortunately, if you want to move it to different views, you will have to recreate it. What I would suggest is if you've created a Canvas page like this and you want to make a new one, but you don't want to have to change everything, you just want to change some stuff, I would recommend duplicating it. You say duplicate view, and now you've got a Canvas page that's exactly the same, and you can just tweak the widgets that you want. So it's not 100% moving widgets around, but it may help you in terms of if you need to create different Canvas pages with just slight differences. Alrighty. Ooh, we got one more question. So that was about the widgets. Alrighty. Can we import retake notes and draw over images by bulk? That is a very good question. Right, so there isn't a way to upload attachments in bulk via the UI. What I would suggest is you can do it via our API. Now, our API is our scripting API that allows you to modify things in bulk. You can have scripts that run in loops. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time to cover that exactly. What I would suggest is to start by looking at developer.shotgunsoftware.com. And also, if you need, because this is something that you'd probably need a bit of support with, is to actually submit a support ticket. So from our support site, you can actually submit a request. You just click the drop down here and say submit request. You can also send an email to support@shotgunsoftware.com. So I just wanted to put that out there for those who have further questions. Unfortunately, this is something that we probably would advise you on further, but it's not something that we'd be able to cover now. So the short answer is unfortunately not in the UI, but you can do it with the API, and I'd suggest putting in a request so that we can help you do that. So I'm sorry I couldn't answer that 100%. We have another question, which is how do we start from the beginning, right from importing project images? And again, that's quite a broad question in terms of topics. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have time to actually cover that. But what I would suggest, and I'm going to I would suggest going to our support site and going to user guides and Shotgun. And there is a specific page that I'm looking for, which is a tutorial that actually shows us how to start from the very beginning. I'm just going to spend 2 seconds to see if I can track it down. Just trying to think what I am looking for. Okay, I'm not going to. I think what we will do is we will follow up with that in the links that we will send out afterwards. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we do have a very good tutorial that does show you how to start from scratch, how you can get things into Shotgun, including importing images. So I will follow up with that information.
I think you should try Introduction to Shotgun. So I think that's the link that's come up with.
That's the one. That's what I was looking for. An introduction to Shotgun. Fantastic. This is actually a recent article that we published which is designed exactly for those who want to start from scratch. Now, that doesn't just include importing images, it includes how to set up Shotgun, how to set up your various pages, and so on. So we do it in chapters. We start from things like creating a project. We then move on to tasks and pipeline steps, and then we actually go on to what you were asking, which is images and media. So it's quite a long document, but as you can see, it sort of walks you through the various stages. We have a lot of pictures and diagrams and things to help you get started. So I hope it's something that you can read through and you can follow up on. Again, if you have any specific questions on any of this or you get stuck, you can always submit a ticket or a request to support@shotgunsoftware.com. Alrighty. Fantastic.
And I think that's the end of our questions.
All right. Okay. So that's it for today. Thank you, guys. I know it's the afternoon there, so I won't keep you any longer, but it's been a pleasure chatting. Don't forget, you can get in touch with our support at support@shotgunsoftware.com. And thank you, Mansi, and the organizers for organizing this webinar.
Yep. Thank you, guys. So we can end it.
Alrighty. Do we have a closing statement?
No, I think we can just end that.
Okay, right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to close down the webinar now. So good luck and enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.